ladies and gentlemen, it's a Ukrainian show, and not only Ukrainian, but a few other countries. Don't want to mention them, but we will concentrate on Ukraine, of course. And my name is Sasha Starr. Our guest today is Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Yes, Jonathan, did you notice a very interesting thing that Ukraine was almost out of news and nobody would even think about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything all concentrated on Iran and US and so on, Israel. And all of a sudden, I noticed in the last few days, it started to change because there is nothing much to discuss about America, Iran, and Israel. There is
Right.
kind of a ceasefire. There is you can call it any way you want it.
You could call it a pause between rounds of a boxing match.
Sure, that could be just as
They're
well.
on their corners, and right now the war in Ukraine has settled into from the Ukrainian perspective. Say, oh, okay, there's nothing much to see here because we're beating the living daylights out of the Russians, and
Absolutely.
apparently that's not attractive enough to the Western news media. What? The Ukrainians are actually winning? Oh, we have to change our entire narrative. My goodness, what are we going to talk about now?
I think there was one small thing that was actually getting attention from
Yes.
media. It's $105 billion loan to Ukraine, although technically it's a loan, but the terms of the loan is that Ukraine would have to start repayment of the loan when Russia will pay its reparations to Ukraine.
Which
Which
is
will happen never. Yeah.
exactly. So in effect, it is an interest-free loan with no repayment period, no payment due date. So it says, here's $105 billion. Spend it in good health and spend it in good health and good luck finishing up the Ukrainian war. And it's an excellent development for Ukraine. I'm waiting for, of course, I'm waiting for the Ukrainians to finish off the Russians, like in a boxing match. Okay, come on, Ukrainians, deliver the knockout blow, make them declare victory and go home.
You know what I think is happening? Because right now Russia has all the green light to sell as much oil as they can ever possibly do, and so on, and they don't. And you know why? Because Ukraine disabled close to 50% of their refineries, and they're all producing facilities and so on. It's in disarray. And I saw the pictures when the flame is going on for several days, and they don't even try to bring it down. Oh, let it just
And we
go.
can't just let it burn. We can't sell it anyway. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost taking on the aspects of a comedy.
Yes, yes.
If all that preceded it weren't so sad, but in any case, you can't say that the Russians don't deserve what they're getting.
I yesterday had a private conversation with one person. You would characterize him as a MAGA operative.
Oh, okay. A very pro-Trump person. Okay.
Believe it or not, he's originally from Ukraine.
Okay.
But somebody said on one of the podcasts that the Russian-speaking MAGA are the most stubborn there are in the universe. There are no harder species as the Russian-speaking MAGA people. And yes, this example was perfect in that respect. He was furious at Ukraine that it's devastating Russian refineries and so on, because Trump wants to Russia to sell oil so the prices would go down. So Ukrainians are, in effect, they are disabling Trump's program. So Trump has to be furious at Ukraine. And as soon as he will finish with Iran, he will go after Ukraine because Ukraine disobeyed his orders.
Yeah.
I said, what orders?
In fact, he's not in a position to give any orders to Ukraine. So
That's really strange. Well,
it's like when Go ahead. Yes.
He may voice some displeasantries of what's happened. So for him, okay, if Ukraine wouldn't destroy these Russian refineries, so Russia would supposedly sell more oil, get more revenue, and I don't know since when he treats Putin's revenue as his own. I don't think he would go that far.
Yeah.
So it's
at some level he realizes that he cannot control every factor of the situation.
Yeah, and don't forget that it's obvious, and I think Trump knows about it, that Russia is helping Iran against US.
Right.
And provided intelligence, and probably more than just intelligence, and so on. So, I think it would be better if Trump would be quiet about the Russian situation, at least for now.
He should just be grateful that the way things are playing out the way they are. He should look on the bright side of things. You can't have the entire loaf of bread, but at least you got half a loaf. So and he should be happy with that. So yes, I mean that's like being disappointed in a game of bowling where you bowled only 10 points, 10 pins short of a perfect game, and you're disappointed you didn't bowl a perfect game. Well, how often do people bowl 290? So in any case, he should be happy.
Another point of view I came across just in the last day or two was the point that the person who was making comments, he was dissatisfied with the present situation in this war. So he was talking about, okay, he understands that U.S. has a sloppy intelligence. They don't have really people who can investigate and talk about Iran in any meaningful terms. They don't know this country well enough or so on. But Israel, they do have Mossad. They do have perfect intelligence about Iran. So come Israel didn't warn America that Iran can do so and such and such, or they did it on purpose to get America involved in the war, and then what can we do? So we didn't know that Iran would start bombing the Gulf states and so on. By the way, the Gulf state story is going a little bit beyond what's happening on the battlefield, because a lot of the investments in AI coming from exactly this Arab states, Gulf states, so on, and they already made the announcement that they are going to either stop or withdraw a lot of money from AI. It's not in their interest right now, and you don't blame them, because Dubai is empty. All these beautiful shopping malls, plazas, etc. It's all seats empty. Hotels are empty, and it may continue so for some foreseeable future. I don't see how people would rush to Dubai.
It's not confined, Sasha. That problem of empty buildings is not confined just to Dubai. In China, they have all of these ghost cities, that stand empty. And in Russia, I'm sure they're in North Korea, they have these beautiful hotels in the capital that are empty because it's really there for show. It's a Potemkin village. There are Potemkin villages all over the place, and now which signals some very interesting problems that we'll have to deal with after this war is over. But for Ukraine, I project, and I think you would agree for the most part, is that a very bright, very bright economic future. Once the war is over, there are nations now that are so impressed with Ukraine's military prowess and technology that they are asking Ukraine for assistance and asking to buy. And all Ukraine has to do is ramp up its existing capability. And they have excess capability they can still ramp up to meet the demand and, pardon me for sounding so capitalist, make a profit on this. They'll have their own military industrial complex.
Yeah, and it's very modern,
Yeah.
and they're producing exactly what's now in demand in 21st century, whereas America is most of its arsenal is 20th century
Yeah,
arsenal.
and the U.S. military recognizes this. It recognizes it because now that $1.5 trillion defense budget that President Trump is proposing, a lot of that is going to be used to develop more 21st century true 21st century technology and replace those. For example, the development of advanced drone technology will enable America, I predict, the United States military, to economize on not needing to have so much in the way of manpower, of personal soldiers. They can reduce certain portions of their military, specifically the army.
So
The
for $1.5 trillion, Jonathan, America would move in some time to where Ukraine is today without spending $1.5 trillion.
Right. They can simply buy Ukrainian, have the Ukrainians advise them on how to produce and develop technology at least equivalent to Ukrainian technology level of technology in the area of drones. And I'm quite confident that the Ukrainians are inventive enough and creative enough, as they have demonstrated so far in this war, that they will continue to make innovations which will be of interest and value to the rest of the world. Because we live in such an imperfect world, a morally imperfect world, wars are going to be with us for the remainder of the 21st century. Hopefully not to the scale of the Russian-Ukrainian war, but at least Ukraine will be in a very positive position to contribute to the overall strength of NATO, the defense of Europe itself. They will become the cornerstone of European defense. And the United States has what I would consider to be somewhat of a luxury in being able to scale back and become what I have recommended, to become the world's geopolitical balancer, not its policeman, not its empire builder, not trying to force regime change to create democracies in other countries. And by the way, as any student of the U.S. Constitution will tell you, we have the United States has never tried to promote constitutional republics in other countries because it's very labor intensive and it requires certain things that other countries are not willing to accept. So it's not. The United States should not be in the business of trying to create democracies because those can be inherently unstable. And the founding fathers feared that establishment of democracies would lead to the tyranny of the majority, and they did not want to promote that. So, and that's why there's.
If a country is more or less, I don't know, in the Stone Age, there are a few countries around the world in the Stone Age. How you instill democracy in this type of countries?
With a great deal of difficulty, and you really should not do it at all, because as Alexander Solzhenitsyn had stated, that the only way that Russia could transition from totalitarianism would be through the means of establishing an enlightened despotism. In other words, an enlightened authoritarianism, a strong central government with benign intentions, and from there establish the basis to going to a democracy or something resembling that. And Solzhenitsyn asserted that if Russia were to try to go straight from totalitarianism to democracy, it would be smashed into an anarchical pulp. It would be chaos. And what Solzhenitsyn projected largely came true.
Yeah.
And then they reverted back, and they essentially reverted back to what they knew, an authoritarian dictatorship. And that's what Putin is. And that's all they know. And if they don't know anything else other than authoritarian dictatorship, they're going to have a great deal of difficulty in transitioning to something they don't know, which would be, hopefully, they certainly would not be able to transition to a constitutional republic like that of the United States because they have no experience with doing that.
Yeah. And by the way, with the Ukrainian war, sometimes I'm watching this Russian talk shows. And on one of the major talk shows with Solovyov, who is a spokesman for the show, there is one Russian general by the name Khodorkovsky, and he's mm, he should be viewed more or less as a realistic person instead of saying, "Oh, we're gonna win in 2 weeks, in 2 years, in 25 years." He's quite realistic, and what he said on one of the shows, he said that by normal or conventional weapons, there is no way whatsoever that Russia can take over Ukraine. Never mind even the part of the Donbass that controlled by Ukrainians. By conventional weapons, it's impossible to do. It doesn't matter. It's 2 years, 20 years, or 200 years. Just impossible. So what you do, you stop this and try to do something else instead, or you have to demolish all Ukrainian bridges across the Dnieper River primarily, and some other structures. But the problem is that these bridges, they were built in Soviet times, and the technical characteristic were to withstand the nuclear bombing. So to destroy these bridges, you don't require just any nuclear devices, but you multiple nuclear devices, very strong, and whether some of them would be maybe tactical in nature, some of them will be brought by equivalent of B-52 bomb.
The interesting thing there, Sasha, is that when you try to say, well, we'll have to use tactical nuclear weapons versus strategic nuclear weapons. Well, if you're on the receiving end of those types of weapons, you can't tell the difference between you. Oh, we've been only been hit by a tactical nuclear weapon. To the recipient,
trying to figure out, was it tactical?
Exactly. Exactly. Once you get beyond a certain threshold, it makes no difference. So, so in any case, but you're quite correct in that they would have to use such a scale of destructiveness that the game would not be worth the candle. What you would be taking over would be a radioactive wasteland.
Absolutely,
and so they are stuck with a bad deal either way. And
right. So what's happening right now? Russia was playing for a war of attrition. Putin believed that Russia can just oversee Ukraine, just sitting there, fighting here and a little bit here and a little bit there, and Ukraine will collapse anyway, just a matter of time. So now, when Ukraine made 50% of Russian oil export impossible, so it's Russia is running out of money much faster than it's ever thought. And Ukraine just got $105 billion loan from European Union. Technically, it's a loan,
right.
But one of the stipulations of the loan is that will be repaid by Ukraine only after it will be paid reparation monies from Russia,
which right. So it's all theirs. There's no essentially for all practical intents and purposes, it's a massive interest-free loan with no strings attached.
Absolutely. In Europe, it's not taking a huge risk because all they will do, oh, did you pay reparation? Oh, not yet. Okay. We are going to confiscate all this money. It's a collateral for that loan. Your money is gone. Bye-bye. Now you can pay reparation or you don't pay reparation. Nobody cares anymore. So this is absolutely fantastic thing. Now, this friend of mine, the MAGA follower, he was trying to picture that loan as Ukraine will never see this money. It will be used to purchase American weapons. So Ukraine has nothing to do with that. So I started to dig into it and information. And what I found is that 1/3 of that money is used directly by Ukrainian government to continue to govern the country. The 2/3 will be deliberately used by Ukraine. It's Ukrainian money from now on. It's a loan, but Ukraine is on this money. And Zelensky already said that he is no longer interested in any American weapons. So it's not going to be used to buy American weapons anymore, but it will be buying equivalent of European. Um, mm, they have different weapons from U.S. in some ways. Although, for example, mm, the the Eurofighters, they have a Rafale, they have a Gripen from Sweden, they have some of them, and some of them experts believe that they're superior to F-15. Some of them believe that they're almost as good as F-15, but not as good as F-15. So it's very, very difficult for me, specifically, to figure out the difference between Eurofighters. There is also Typhoon. It's all part
Oh
of
yeah.
Eurofighter. So they do have a Mirage from France is quite capable. Whether F-15s exceeds capacities of all these machines remains to be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to buy a Cadillac when a Ford will do the job just as well.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the case. That's what I was thinking. Two-thirds will be used for purchasing, and it's not just the fighters; it's many other classes of weapons that Ukraine badly needs, and they will start getting it on their own schedule, on their choice, and this is absolutely fantastic situation. And now, what Putin is going to cry to Donald Trump to. Please help me. Look at what they're doing. They got $100 billion. They're going to buy a lot of weapons.
And President Trump, it would be perfectly appropriate for him to say, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. You shouldn't have started the war in the first place. Now, should you?"
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, um, I don't know who advised Putin on starting this war. I think it was his idea primarily, and it was the wrong place and the wrong time.
Wrong war, wrong place, wrong time, wrong enemy.
Yeah, and here is a now payback time, Mr. Putin.
Oh, yeah.
It is time to do just that.
And I don't believe either you or I could be accused of engaging in Schadenfreude, what the Germans call Schadenfreude, which is joy in the bad luck of other people. When in this case, it's in the bad luck on the Russians' part is entirely deserved. So it is not Grissa. Oh, we hate the Russians. No, we hate what your leaders are doing. That would be more accurate.
But that's a war, if compared to Iranian war with US, it's kind of a very strange situation where Russia, much bigger country, much more powerful, bigger economy, nuclear options, and in fifth year there are no results. It cannot overcome Ukraine. Ukraine is so skillfully defends its territory, producing a new type of weapons and successfully implements them.
Well,
It's
here's,
incredible.
some- here's something would probably help you understand that. During the Vietnam War, there was a joke that ran around in the late '60s, where in the joke, the U.S. military and political leaders had this big, massive computer that was supposed to be able to solve any military problem and so forth, and they programmed in all the information about the relative capacities of North Vietnam and the relative capacities of the United States. And the question was asked of the computer, "When will we win?" And the computer came back with a response, "You won back in 1964."
Yeah,
But
fantastic.
you see, by normal logic, it's just like the real life story where it told you where the one of our senior military strategists was speaking with his North Vietnamese counterpart, a North Vietnamese general, after the Vietnam War, and the American expert remarked to the North Vietnamese general, it says, "You never defeated us on the battlefield." And as I told you before, North Vietnamese general replied, "That is quite true. It is also irrelevant." Because
That's right.
the North Vietnamese understood better than the Americans at that time that wars are fought for political purposes. Wars are not fought just for the sake of fighting military actions. There has to be a political objective in mind. And the North Vietnamese recognized what the true weakness of the U.S. military was its domestic audience. If you strike at the will of the American people to continue the war, to continue their political support for such a war, then that is the true center of gravity. That is where the war is going to be won. And the North Vietnamese, by launching their Tet Offensive in January 1968, even though they were militarily defeated, they nevertheless inflicted significant enough casualties on American forces and destroyed the perception that the end of the war was in sight. It basically convinced not only the American public, but also such leading media figures like Walter Cronkite, who was at that time arguably the most trusted journalist in the United States. And when Walter Cronkite came on the TV and declared essentially that the war in Vietnam could not be won, that President Lyndon Johnson remarked that if I've lost Walter Cronkite, I've lost the American people. And once he realized that led to President Johnson stating that he was no longer going to seek the re-election as president of the United States. He dropped out. And so that left the contest between Hubert Humphrey and Richard Nixon and George Wallace. And so kind of know the story from there. But in any case, these wars serve to remind the American people that war is an extension of politics by other means. That's what Clausewitz said. And Clausewitz knew what he was talking about. So in this case, we're having to relearn that lesson again in the 21st century. Ukraine has learned it very well. And they are in effect achieving, I project that they will win a meaningful political victory that will lead to, certainly, if not, you certainly won't lead to world peace, but it is certainly at least going to lead to a much more desirable situation for both Ukraine and its people.
Yes, Jonathan, agree with you. And all I wanted to say about Iran is America is superior to Iran from military point of view 50, 100, 200 times as much.
Yeah. And they basically what they do have some levers left, which means of coercion, which some would call near apocalyptic, such as trying to destroy Iranian power plants and water desalination plants. If they do that could be construed as an existential threat to Iran's existence as an organized political entity. That would be the closest you could come to establishing a Carthaginian peace, the virtual destruction of a nation as a viable political entity. We hopefully, by use of the blockade and other means short of those measures, we can apply enough pressure that Iran will seek a peace and gain a measure of sanity. And so that has yet to be seen. We are still applying the levers, and that is what you and I will be observing, as will many other people, in the coming weeks and months.
Yes, Jonathan, thank you so much for today's program. And we are going to have a weekend and have a great one. And we'll see you on Tuesday, same place, same time.
Excellent.
And glory to Ukraine and the United States.
God bless America. Yep.
Yeah, all the best. See you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Okay.